Welcome back, spooky friends. Today's case is slightly longer, so grab a snack and let's go. In 1988, the Wyrick family moved to Ellerslie, Georgia. They moved there with their daughter Heidi, who was 4 years old at the time. The town of Ellerslie is so small. Today, the town consists of a population of 2,000 people. As the family settled in, they began to notice that Heidi became lonely. Her mother, Lisa, would play with her outside on a swing set that her dad, Andy, built. But Heidi still showed signs of loneliness. Then one day, as Heidi was watching TV in the living room, the doorbell rang. 4-year-old Heidi jumped up from her seat and went to answer the door. Standing there was a man dressed in a black suit with a thin tie and a black top hat. Heidi looked down and realized how shiny his shoes were. "Hello, I'm Mr. Gordy," he said. "Hello," said Heidi in response. "Would you like to be my friend?" smiled Mr. Gordy. And in an unexpected response, Heidi said yes. Later, Heidi at the dinner table would tell her mom about her new friend, Mr. Gordy. "Mom, I made a new friend," she said excitedly. "You did?" said Lisa, confused. She had only seen Heidi on the swing set alone all day. With the swing set being in their own backyard, it would be unlikely that she would meet any local kids there. "Yeah, his name is Mr. Gordy." Lisa's stomach dropped as Heidi told her mother about Mr. Gordy, from his top hat to his shiny shoes. Lisa then rushed to the front door and locked it. She looked all around for missing items, but nothing was out of place. She hadn't even heard the doorbell ring that day. She got Heidi ready for bed, and soon Andy would arrive from work. That night, Andy wouldn't sleep. A few days had passed, and Lisa was fixing Heidi a snack. "Can I play on the swings?" asked Heidi. "Yes, sweetie, I'll be out with your snack soon," replied Lisa, as she watched Heidi put her hand out to her side and walk to the swing set. It was almost like she was gripping onto something that was not there. Moments later, Lisa came out with apple slices. "Here you go, sweetie. Do you need me to push you?" Heidi looked back at an empty spot. "No, Mr. Gordy is pushing me." Lisa looked at the empty spot as her heart rate increased. "Where is Mr. Gordy?" Immediately regretting the question. "He's right there." Heidi points to the empty spot as she starts to eat her apple slices. "Let's eat our snack inside," said Lisa as they rushed inside. Later, Lisa would relay the event to Andy, and they came to the conclusion that Mr. Gordy is an imaginary friend. They allowed Heidi to interact with Mr. Gordy, thinking she made this friend because of the move and how lonely she was. And since Mr. Gordy, Heidi had been happier, laughing and playing, so there's no harm in allowing her to play make-believe. A few months had passed, with Heidi shortly becoming 5 years old. Mr. Gordy had become part of normalcy in the Wyrick home. That was until strange things would begin to happen in the house. Lisa began to notice objects moving, doors closing. She decided to contact the previous owner, Mrs. Kelly, who was still alive and residing down the street. As they sat down for coffee in Mrs. Kelly's new home, they looked over documents together. "Mrs. Kelly, have you ever experienced anything weird in the home before we bought it?" Mrs. Kelly had lived there all her life. It was her mother's house. "No," she said. In disbelief, Lisa said, "Never anything paranormal? Things moving on their own?" "No," said Mrs. Kelly, "never anything." As Mrs. Kelly looked over the documents with Lisa, they looked over a past deed from Mrs. Kelly's mother. Lisa noticed a very familiar name signed at the bottom of the deed. The realtor's state signature read, "James S. Gordy." "Who is this?" Lisa asked. "That's Mr. Gordy. He was my mom's friend and realtor. He was a great man," said Mrs. Kelly. "Was?" asked Lisa. Yes, he passed away in 1974. Lisa was struck with fear, and she thanked Miss Kelly and headed home. Lisa would keep this information to herself and the very next day head to the library, searching for answers. And this is what she found. Born June 19, 1888, James Gordy is the son of a doctor and went on to run a real estate company in Columbus for 60 years. He was an active church member and was a Sunday school superintendent at Ellison Methodist, where Mrs. Kelly was a student. He was also a Chamber of Commerce member and a Mount Vernon Masonic. He was married to Frances Josephine Ellison, and they had 3 children, 1 son and 2 daughters. James died at the age of 86 on September 5th, 1974. With this new information, Andy and Lisa came up with a plan of helping Heidi release Mr. Gordy by taking her to the cemetery where he was buried. Once they arrived, without anyone telling Heidi where to go, with her little hand out as if holding Mr. Gordy's hand, she walked through the cemetery. Her parents watched, amazed, as she zipped past tombstone to tombstone and stopped at Mr. Gordy's stone. They looked at each other wide-eyed, seeing as Heidi couldn't read. She was only 4 years old. Her parents hoped this event would help Heidi realize Mr. Gordy is dead, or help Mr. Gordy pass on. But this attempt to rid themselves would fail. Heidi would go on to see Mr. Gordy plus other spirits to this day. She is currently 37 years old and is married and an artist. Thank you for watching, and if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments below, and I'll see you spooky friends in the next one.